to order. Heather, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair. Chair Saxon.
Here.
Vice Chair Lovell.
Here.
Director Cutchin is excused. Director Hensley.
Here.
Director Keating.
Here, present.
Director Johnston.
Here.
Director Plummer.
Here.
Director Settlemeyer is en route online soon. Director Stout.
Here.
We have a quorum. That's great. Well, I hope everyone had a great holiday and restful and ready to crank up the new year.
Crank it.
And of course, I know where most people will be tomorrow at 4:30. So, we'll be on looking at our TVs probably, cheering for the Ducks, even though we necessarily all didn't go there. So, all right. Are there any adjustments to today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. We will now devote some time for public participation, limited to 3 minutes per speaker. This first go-around is for any comments that are on today's agenda. Are there any members of the public online?
No, Chair,
There's none in the audience. So we'll move on. Then we'll also ask for any comments from the public on an item that's not on today's agenda. And there's no one online or in the audience. So we'll move on to that. Next item is any comments from members of the board. Anyone? Dylan.
I just wanted to resurface the conversation we had a number of years ago now, brought forward by Councilor Keating about the time of this meeting. I think that, at that time we tabled this because there were a number of board members who are no longer on the board who kind of said that this was the only time that their schedules would allow. But I would be interested, for the sake of just helping to increase public engagement with these meetings, to consider having them outside of traditional work hours. I don't want to motion to schedule something right now off the cuff, but I guess just wanting to do an informal temperature check as to whether people would be willing to consider a scheduling poll to think about if there could be a time that might work. That could be outside of regular working hours, or even just a time that might work better for us as the makeup of the board has shifted in the last couple of years. Sorry if I'm speaking out of turn here.
I think it's worth having a discussion about that, and maybe even sending a poll out to board members, to see what their availability is. I mean, I think for the citizen members, it's probably less of an issue than our elected officials that have a lot of commitments in the evening. So that's going to be probably a little more challenging. So, and I guess the other thing, I don't know from the city representatives in the county whether this month or next month there'll be a possibility of new representatives to LRAPA. I know usually the cities a lot of times will send people, starting the year to different boards and commission liaisons. So, there's that. So I don't know what the situation is for.
So far, you're stuck with me. Same here.
Okay.
Yeah, you're stuck with.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be my last meeting, as chair, so I don't care.
I think there's one more. I think you should start the next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we can certainly. I think it's worth talking. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Dylan, for bringing it up. I just would add to that my longing to hear from staff. From my vantage point, an evening meeting would open it up for the public to participate more. And at least I would, once I'm working in Salem, it'd be easier for me to participate more once the legislative session, short legislative session starts, excuse me. But I would be remiss to really advance this issue any more if I didn't hear from staff and what the cost, like the social cost and the fiscal, what the actual cost is of having staff be here after hours. If that is overly burdensome and cumbersome, then I might rethink my position on it. But I think that piece would be informative. So in addition to a doodle poll of board members, I would encourage the LRAPA administration to maybe poll or gauge what the staff footprint would be as well. Thanks.
Howard, Chair, if I may, I'll also say that recently, in recent months, or in the last year, 2025, there were a number of meetings where we did have a pretty good amount of public participation. So I think that the time that we have during the day is not preventing anybody from participating, but I definitely agree that there are limitations of a workday for those who may want to participate. And if it ends up that we still have a workday type meeting, I think that reflecting on how we're communicating broadly to anybody who's unable to participate, that they can still send messages that we can carry forward to the board that can still be seen and digested and touched upon during the public comment if they're unable to participate in person or virtually.
Could I maybe just chime in or just add? I agree totally with what Linda's saying, and wanting to respect staff's time and those considerations. But yeah, I don't want to again like push anything forward, but I want to maybe just like open up the conversation so we can just think about it. And also will applaud the awesome work that staff has been doing to engage the community more. We've seen an uptick in community engagement in the recent year and a half or so. So just appreciate that.
Did you have something?
No.
Oh, anything else? All right, then we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the November meeting. Is there a motion?
Chair, I'd like to move approval of the meeting minutes from November 13th, 2025, both the meeting and executive session minutes.
Second.
Second. Is there any further discussion or amendments, corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor of approving the November minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. Thank you. Is Kelly here?
I'm here.
There you are.
Good afternoon, everybody.
See you way down there.
I'm way down here. So at the last CAC meeting, which was November's meeting, I don't have it, we had a presentation on the new VR smoke screen that LRAPA is using. Morgan Kelly presented that to us, which was pretty fascinating, and the group was able to share some of the industry side of the actual, hands-on physical smoke school. And then we also, since the last board meeting, we talked about potential outreach to new members of the CAC. And so we as a group decided it would be nice to draft like an email/letter, just to have something prepared if we had people that we wanted to reach out to, whether it's like construction or electricians or that type of thing. And so working with staff, Evelina and I have come up with a draft that we are going to present at the next meeting to get kind of group consensus, and then start putting together a list of folks that we can reach out to just to gauge interest, to invite them to come and attend a meeting and see if they would like to have a representative. And so, and then in the meantime, we actually did get another application. And so we've reached out to them to see if they're available for an interview at the next meeting. So we will hopefully have a chance to meet with them soon.
Any questions of Kelly?
Right.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Okay, moving on. Christina, approval of financial reports.
Yes,
Is that
that's
there,
me.
please?
There's both an October and a November
That's right.
update in this packet because we didn't meet last month, so we would have done October last month, but we're doing both of them this month. On the October one, first, we'll talk about that one. You'll see that we're still under budget in every category. We're getting closer to being on budget instead of under budget in two line items. One is personnel services under the general fund, and one is personnel services under the special revenue Title V fund. And not only is it not alarming to me that we're getting close, or we've been close the whole year, because we did such a good job with budgeting for those line items, it doesn't surprise me that we're right on track. So I don't believe there's anything to worry about. I just promised I would highlight in yellow anything that was getting close, and red would be way too close or over. So there's nothing red. Does anybody have any questions about anything included on the October financial report?
Just one thing, and it'll also apply to November. When do we start to recognize revenues? I forget.
I'm sorry.
When do we start to recognize revenues? Right now, it shows adopted budget of the variance we haven't received. The red numbers up top for the revenues, just refresh me.
The variance.
Yeah,
So the variance on the revenue side is just saying how much we have not recognized yet. And so we recognize the federal and state revenues when those amounts are submitted to be reimbursed to us.
right.
Since they're on a reimbursement schedule. So the day that we send them the invoice for what they owe us this time, or the day that we log into ASAP to get the federal funding drawdowns, we go ahead and post it on that day. And then whenever it's received, it's shown as an AR received. So it shows up as received the second we invoice, if that
Right.
makes sense, because we do accrual accounting.
Yep.
On the grant fund one, it's the same thing, because that's reimbursable funding. We have to wait till we have the expense to actually book the revenue, if that makes sense. Because if we don't have the expense, there is no revenue.
That's right.
And I'll add, Counselor Stout, that like, for example, our allocation we get from the state, we have a schedule of quarterly, essentially, bills of that. We invoice quarterly, we follow that. And permit fees, like the Title V fees, those are invoiced over the summer and then usually come in the fall. And then we're getting annual fees currently. So throughout the year, the fee side of things comes in a general trickle. On the legislative allocations or grants, those follow a particular schedule by the agreement.
Very good.
Good question. Any other questions about October? Okay, let's move on to November. It's the same exact summary, really, except for at November, we're at 42% of the year's been elapsed. But the same two categories are close, and we're tracking them closely, which is personnel expenses in the general fund and the Title V fund. One thing to note, I guess, between the two on the on Title V, the reason there is a negative amount in the receivable category for permit fees. That is because one of our Title V sources needed a refund for some reason, and I don't know if Max is tuned in, he might remember. But anyways, oh, great. Is everything okay?
It's a garbage truck.
It's garbage.
Oh, I didn't know if it was an alarm of some sort. I was like, should we be running right now?
Running toward the dumpster, yes.
So even though it looks like we're under budget on the Title V permit fees, oftentimes if there's like a transfer in ownership, there may be more income that comes in through Title V. The year is not completely over, but right now, the reason there's a difference between October and November is because there was a refund that was made of some fees. So let's see if there's anything else to talk about of note on November. I don't think so. Does anybody have any questions about November's?
So on the Title V fees, looks like 5 months into the year, we've recorded almost all the revenue for the entire year. Am I reading that correctly? And that's to be expected, just the timing of when those are.
Is because we invoice in July. So we're currently working through sending out letters currently that set what the fee schedule is to Title V permits for what will be the invoice that gets sent out in the new fiscal year, which is July 1. And then Title V holders have a period of time that they have to pay those fees, and they usually come in that late summer, early fall. Okay. And then that's the annual clip for invoicing that's based off fees driven by emissions.
Okay.
And those revenues are booked on our accounts as soon as we invoice. So if we invoice Title V on July 1st, it'll already show up here.
Okay. And then I think what you were just saying is that Title V revenue actually went down from October to November, which
With-
what usually makes it is kind of counterintuitive, but
Right.
it's because there was a refund or some minor adjustment made. Okay, got it. Thank you.
The first line item in October, November, federal and state revenues.
Mhm.
Is it advantageous to lump those together, or would we as a board be able to glean more insight if federal revenues and state revenues were parsed up?
I don't know. It's really your preference. The way our financials print before I pretty them up in the version that you guys get, it actually labels this section of federal and state revenues as intergovernmental. And the only things that are included there are the DEQ state general fund contribution. And then we have 2 other smaller grants with DEQ. And then the EPA 105 base grant that also includes Northwest AirQuest. So I could easily make a federal line and a state line if you would like me to. Whatever guidance you guys give me, I'm happy to follow going forward.
I'd like to get the temperature of the whole board. I think it would be helpful, but I don't want to create more work if it's going to throw off the whole system.
I think it's adding one line to the Excel sheet, and then the report already has the information, so it's just the work of transposing it. So from a staff perspective, I don't think that it's a huge lift to
No big deal.
parse that out further.
Great. So
Plenty of room at the bottom, even with my footnotes, so there's room to add one little line, I think, yeah.
Okay. All right, that's great. I'd welcome that.
Is everybody okay with that?
As long as she doesn't reduce the font. I'm okay with that, yeah.
For now, I don't have to, but it's pretty small already, isn't it? I do have a magnifying glass on my desk, but I
So
only
do I,
have.
they're called bifocals.
I do have bifocals also.
So the 105 funds for EPA, does that go through the state first, or that comes directly to the?
That's directly to us.
Okay.
We're unique there's not many locals that have a direct 105 relationship with the EPA. For example, the locals in Washington, their 105s get routed through ecology, which is creating some frustration, as I understand, to the locals there this year. But we have a direct relationship with Region 10 for our 105 funding.
Yeah, I personally think that'd be valuable, like, since we're getting money directly from the EPA.
Okay,
Be good to track that.
yeah, I can make that happen.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Or any questions? Is there a motion to approve the October and November financial reports? So, second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And then we'll just go right into the federal grant status update, which is the next page in the packet. We are officially finished with tag 1. The performance period ended on November 30th. We are still in the closeout phase of the final reporting, but the work for that grant and the spending for that grant is complete. We will be getting a final grant payment of $150,845. I am unclear right now if that has to wait until we turn our closeout documents in, or if we can do that ahead of time. But either way, that's only 3% of the whole grant, so we've carried that much or more before. And I'm not worried that money would come through. We still see it in ASAP as available, so no big deal there. But it is important to note that when we were closing out EJ, they did make us wait until they had received all of our closeout documentation before they let us make that final request. So I just don't know if that'll be the case this time or not. And then tag 2, you will start seeing that ramp up significantly, because now all of the efforts that we were spending down on tag 1 are now being transitioned to tag 2. So we'll see lots more activity in tag 2 in the future, but not much right now.
Just the timing of getting a grant extension.
A grant has been extended by the EPA. Our initial request was for 2-year grant extension, and the EPA strongly recommended we break that into 2 separate year-long requests. And so we have received a 1-year extension. And so that
I
now
need to
goes
update
through.
this
Yes.
to
That's right.
27.
Okay, yeah,
That's what prompted my question.
I'm so glad you asked because I knew we had gotten the extension and I didn't connect the dots of needing to update it here, so thank you. Did everyone catch that update on the staff report under targeted airshed grant 2? The end date will be August of 2027 now. And we will eventually ask for another extension. They just asked us to wait.
So I think we'll see how quickly we move into that needed extension. There has been a large ramp up on SWS, the nonprofit, to make sure that we're burning down the tag $1 before the opportunity to burn them down has ended. SWS is still maintaining the same number of staff that they increased to increase that burn down rate. So I think that the rate may still be at a higher clip. So whether or not we need that extra extension is still to be determined, but we're seeing it as a potential.
And then the last thing on this topic, Travis, do you want to discuss this or do you want me to about the transition?
So I think moving forward, if it's agreeable to the board, we will cease with the single staff report and instead in the director's report under the finance section, take this text of what is or what will become essentially the targeted airship grant 2 and just incorporating that into the director's reports as opposed to a standalone staff report. But that's at the board's preference.
And to give you an example, I went ahead and included it in the director's report this time so you could see what I'm proposing it looked like. I just thought since it's important enough for you guys to receive that information every time, we should probably switch from staff report to being more of a standard in the director's report. So if you're curious at this exact moment, you can look at towards the end of the director's report. There, let's see what page it would be on. It's page 39 of the packet. It's 14 of the director's report. There was already a fiscal responsibility area, but what I've added is where it says grant fund details about halfway down the page. That's pretty much what you see on the staff report without the issue statement, background information, or staff recommendation. So it has the pertinent information that you guys need, I think. And then if anybody wants to see more, well, really this goes for any time. If you want to see more in the fiscal area of the director's report, just let us know and we'll make sure that we're including it.
Everyone okay with that proposal?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
One less piece of paper to have to filter through.
Make the agenda look smaller.
Christina, before you move on, I just want to share with the board some appreciation to Christina as well as SWS as the nonprofit as we've gone through our tag 1 reconciliation. So the board may be familiar that with the reality that LRAPA transitioned software database last year from an old to a new, and in similar fashion, all of our tag record keeping had to pull that information out from the old software with the new software. So we had 3 different basically piles of data that Christina had to put into one and then reconcile that with our nonprofit partners to make sure that we were all seeing the same thing and in alignment so we can be well prepared for our grant, our final grant turnout of tag. It was a heavy lift. So I just
heavier than we thought it would be.
want to just express appreciation to Christina as well as SWS for the teamwork and collaboration of making sure we all had the same picture together.
Thank you. I'm glad to say that reconciliation project is completely finished, which is a very huge relief to me. So, the next thing on my list for the agenda is a fiscal year 25 audit update. So the audit update is that we were able to provide all the final requested items to Eisler on the 10th of December, and that Eisler is working through the finalization of that audit report. They have told me they're hoping to get the draft of the audit report to me for review and questions and clarifications, things like that, by tomorrow. we'll see. If not by tomorrow, they did promise next week, early next week. And then we have scheduled Cody, who's the lead auditor on our audit this year, to come present the audit report during the February board meeting. So next month. It does mean that we are past the due date for submitting our audit federally, but the due date for submitting our audit to the state is not until the end of March. So we've missed one, but we won't miss the other. So hopefully next year we won't miss either. And then any questions about the audit?
Just a comment, we only approved the Springfield audit on Monday, so we track it pretty good.
Good, thank you. It helps to know that not the only ones that are struggling to meet those deadlines. I'm just needing to remind myself, do we want to talk about the RFP process for the next audit now or later during the director's report?
Howard, do you have a preference?
So let's just, since we're talking money, let's go ahead and do it now.
So we're talking about doing an RFP.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
kind of fill in some
I think
details.
there's a
So,
board report, right?
there's not a board report on it. There is a section in the staff report. So if you want to jump into page, find against the red number on there, it should be page number 40. So I think the context to set everybody on the same page for the board is LRAPA has a requirement to go through a fiscal audit every year. We handle enough federal dollars with our grants that we have to do a federal single audit, which is essentially a bit of a deeper dive on our federal dollars. Since I have been with LRAPA in 2020, we have, and be even longer before that, been using Eisler CPA for those audits. The board throughout the time I have been here has had some conversation, discussion about doing an RFP or having a reflection of, is our current auditors the best value, or maybe we can see what other value exists. So Christine and I went to see what would be required from our minimum procurement needs are, and what the lowest level of requirement is. Essentially, we need to get 3 written quotes, and then LRAPA has the agency to make what decision is. The cost is around $40,000 for the auditor, at least with about we're paying for those services currently. But we can, if at the direction of the board would like to see more of a full formal RFP process where we go through, we put out for so many days, we collect a review, we could collect applicants or potential interested parties, and then we judge against a rubric and come to a decision of what's going to be best for the organization. That's that formal RFP process that we can go through, and we can also come up with any hybrid between the two. What's listed in the table is essentially both ends of that spectrum of what's the least amount of requirements and then the amount of transparency we want to bring into the process.
I'll just go ahead since Travis and we're talking a little bit about this informally before the meeting. The fact that we haven't gone out to look at other firms that might provide the services, and frankly, the recent history of Eisler not meeting our December 31st deadline, and in some cases missing it, pretty substantially. It just seems to me that it would be appropriate to issue an RFP. And it could be a hybrid of the informal written quotes and a more exhaustive RFP, where at the minimum we could ask for qualifications and performance, and especially meeting deadlines.
Right. And references.
And
too, like
references.
Client references, yeah.
So especially since we've been using the same firms for so long, and that's not necessarily determining to me whether you should go out or not, but I've expressed concern about the failure to meet deadline, even when staff has been able to meet the auditor's deadlines for providing information. So I don't know, it just seems prudent to me to go out.
I think it's prudent to do it similarly to how we decided to always evaluate our financial database, once every 10 years at least. We really should probably come up with a cadence for doing this ongoing in the future, like every 5 years or every whatever that feels comfortable to everyone. So I'd be interested to know if there's a cadence for RFPs related to auditors at any of your organizations that you represent.
I was just gonna add to what you said. It seems like since I've been here, the auditing staff that comes in to present to us at the end of the audit switches every single time as well. And the people that you deal with, even mid-audit, has switched with Eisler multiple times. So, I mean, as part of the RFP or part of that program, maybe instigating something in there that says we're gonna have dedicated staff to what we're looking at, somebody you can work with, because it seems like in my history with audits, if you have somebody that knows your business, what you're doing, and they've done it for multiple years, it can speed up that process versus them throwing somebody new at you every single time you're going through it.
The interesting thing is that the staff that do the most hands-on, that would be Al, in our case, since I've been here, has been consistent.
Yeah.
It's just the face of the organization that kind of changes from year to year. Because Al is not in a leadership role with the organization. They tend to use the lead auditor who's supervising Al to do the reporting. The reason that person changed, I can't speak to previous years because I wasn't here, but last year we had Gatlin, and Gatlin retired from the organization. So that's just turnover that could be unavoided. And our engagement partner is the person that is even higher than the auditing team. And that is, help me know his name, Paul. And he has been consistently our engagement partner, I believe, since we've been with Eisler.
Before I've been here, so.
But he's farther removed from the person that's actually looking at stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that would be a good question, is just to ask what the internal process is for selecting the people that would work on the auditing team from the auditor's side of that. Yeah, if they have an internal process of changing every so often in order to keep a neutral and unbiased opinion. You know, if you work really closely with an auditor several years in a row, you run the risk of a personal relationship developing, not an inappropriate one, but they understand the struggles of the agency. They might give more leniency in one way or the other. So for that reason, I also think that it's wise to do an RFP ever so many years anyways, just to keep that unbiased look at our books there. Yeah.
My comment is I've been strongly in support of putting an RFP out. I don't necessarily think that we need an RFP just for the sake of an RFP every 5 years, only because I'll use City of Springfield as an example. We've had a clean bill of health for 45 years. We've had the same auditing institution for 21 years, and we've had the same auditor for the last 10 or 11. We've actually, the company has actually been bought out since before then. So it was the same staff person throughout the different transitions. So I think that's made for a very clean, simple, clear, and excellent, with no material defects found year in and year out. I would just say, let's look at what are the key performance indicators we're looking for from the auditor. If the auditor is not making those key performance indicators, we send out an RFP. If they are, no reason to change. That's my 2 cents.
Any other comments? So, not a formal, I don't think we need a formal motion, but I think there's consensus that we ought to go out for an RFP and leave the staff as to how exhaustive, I guess, of responses you need from firms.
What I would like to ask of the board, if I may, is, for instance, if you have had a very good experience with a specific auditor, I'd love for you to email me and let me know who that is, so that I can make sure they see that we have published an RFP, and I can kind of nudge them to consider replying to it. Also, if you have an auditing firm that you have any kind of reference you'd like to give about, then that would be helpful. Also, if you have an RFP that your agency has used in order to get their next auditor. I'd love to see those examples as well. I just want to make sure that what I put together as the RFP package really is what we need and want. And sometimes looking at a successful one from another agency is a good place to start.
But Chair, however, members of the board, as I understand the consensus here is a RFP process that is asking for potential vendors to give reflection on performance, deadlines, recommendations from other firms, and then internal processes for how they select their audit staff. Is there other reflections that can be noted that I can write down that we can use as starting points for our RFP structure?
I find myself in the minority. I would have actually longed for more of the hybrid and less staff intensive approach first and seen how that played out. And then if that wasn't satisfactory, then go for the RFP process. But I'm hearing from others that there's a longing to go for the more formal RFP. I get that. I do think there's some value in weaving in either through this particular process or strengthen existing policy that this board may, we don't tie our hands, but this board may every 5 to 10 years go through this process again or consider this process again. That way, there are no surprises with whoever we're partnering with. And I remain consistent, whether it's City of Eugene or the LCC board for 8 years before that. I think there's some health in not being stagnant and looking at who can open up your books and not fall into the trappings of business as usual. So I'm saddened that it's not working out with Eisler. I don't know how valuable it would be to encourage them to, I guess reapply to be, I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs and how sticky that might be. But I something in my gut says that starting with a more informal approach might be healthier. And then this board can, if we're not digging with what we're seeing, then maybe it's time to go to a more formal process. That's just me.
What's the timing that?
Well, we need to get on this as quick as possible so that by the end of springtime, we know who we're using and we can get on their calendar, right? Because that's part of it is, are they, some firms may not reply to the RFP because they just don't have the capacity to take on another client right now of our size. And because we're a government agency, there are certain auditing firms that don't want to audit government agencies because it is labor intensive and there are so many extra regulations in place. So the sooner we can get it underway and get on the right auditor's book, calendar, the better. So we could do like we could call it an informal RFP and maybe shorten usually a formal RFP takes 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe we shorten that time frame. There's some things I think we could do to do something between the informal written quote and the formal RFP.
And for Councilor Keating, I do want to just clarify that I wouldn't describe our relationship with Eisler as a falling out necessarily. It's more a reflection on what is healthy and a good kind of best practice in terms of how we're reconsidering our relationships that we have and are we getting the best value for the dollars that we're spending. But there are tangible items that I think are important to us, which is what is the deadlines? What is the cost to even the organization for that work? Something that might be, if I'm hearing the board and some of the discussion, a bit of that hybrid approach where we are essentially following a informal written quotes, but in our request for quotes, we have more of a rubric component to it where we list out, here's the information we're looking from you to respond to us in our written quote. And then we can still have structure of a rubric that we follow in that determination process, but then not be as limited to some of the formal RFP requirements, which is you have to be publicly noticed for so long. You can not open respondents until a certain particular time and date, and there can be some milestones that you can put yourself in that can slow down how fast we can get on the calendar for an auditor. Because if we don't have an auditor in office in that September timeframe, because for example, this year it was November as opposed to September because of our needs to push that back. But Eisler made it clear that they were very skeptical that they'd be able to get their end of the work done by December 31st, which is the state deadline. And here we are in January and we're not able to meet that mark. So.
Yeah, not to belabor, but as far as like procuring professional services, previous history as a consultant, and it seems like, selection criteria is more than just price. That there's quals and references and approach and meeting deadlines and things like that. And it just seems like even with the informal, you're gonna have to ask some of that information. So.
Yeah, I had planned on asking for that information, whether we went for an informal written quote, or went with the RFP. I wanted them to submit some information to me so that we would have more to go on rather than just price, because oftentimes you get what you pay for, so you can't really just go with the cheapest, right? The cheapest person may not have as much government experience or as much single audit experience or what have you. So.
Most firms have, it's kind of boilerplate stuff they're going to have anyway. So.
Yeah, I would encourage us to encourage Eisler to apply again. I think
I would too.
Yeah, I think that I liked a lot of their work, and it's really hard to find accounting help right now, and audit deadlines are ours took a long time last year, so I think that it's maybe more industry wide than specific to Eisler. So I would absolutely encourage us to hopefully get a bid from them as well.
I've worked with Eisler at LRAPA and also when I was at the Southeast Law Watershed Council, and both times I had very good experiences with Eisler, aside from the workload, like meeting deadlines. What I love about Eisler, and one of the things that I would want to ask in RFP, is they have a phenomenal online tool for uploading the files so that they're encrypted and kept confidential. And so they put everything they're requesting in there, and you can track when you submitted it, and once they accept it, then it turns a different color, and it just really helps especially from Travis's point of view, kind of that balcony look at where are we in the process. It tells you you're 98% complete or whatever. And I have never had that robust of an online auditing tool with any other auditor that I've worked with in my career. And I realized that those moving to paperless online tools, that wasn't even possible at the beginning of my career, right? But it is now. And so that is one of the things that I would be asking, is what kind of file sharing platform do you use? And would they be willing to let me look at it during the RFP process, that kind of thing?
Anything else? Staff, you have pretty good clear direction.
Yeah, so the consensus I'm feeling is maybe not a full formal RFP that's a 6 to 8 week effort, but going greater than just informal written quotes. And what that looks like is written quotes, but with some structure on exactly what we're looking for and asking. And of that is reflections on performance, commitments to deadlines, recommendations from other firms, and internal processes for audit staff and document transfer sharing. And then if there is any good templates or good, the board has references of saying, hey, reach out to this auditor in that process, those are grateful and appreciated.
Sound good to everyone? Okay.
You weren't in the minority after all, Counselor.
The last thing that I needed to share with you guys is that we are doing an analysis of our need to, whether we need to do a supplemental budget or not. So we will have a staff report about that in the February meeting. But as I'm looking at the fact that we're under budget in every category, I do not foresee a need for that, but we'll have a more in-depth analysis and recommendation at next board meeting. And that's it.
Any other questions, Christina? Okay, thank you. Good,
Thank you.
good discussion. All right, we'll move on to Director's contract approval.
Yes, Chair, I'll mention that Counselor Settlemyer is joined us today. Hello, Jim, just want to point that out for everybody. But Chair Saxon, members of the board, the staff report that you, or not the staff report, excuse me, in November, there was an executive session meeting to review my first year's performance as the executive director here. I'm grateful for that feedback and that positive review. I engaged with Howard and David Lovell, Commissioner Lovell, on a potential contract extension for myself. The contract is provided in the packet with you, but the long and short of it is it's a 2-year extension through May of 2028. Compensation changes are to make up for a cost of living increase we did in this fiscal year that my contract did not allow for at the time, as well as establishing what's Exhibit A in the contract, which is setting a pay scale for my role. And each step on that scale is a 2.5% change. I envision for myself, with a positive review from the board, a single step up on that pay scale that aligns with how we do our pay scale with general staff here, which is once a year with a positive performance evaluation, a single step of 2.5% increase to salary on the pay scale, and then any COLAs that we're able to get the budget committee to be agreeable to that our budget can afford, they participate in that as well. So that's essentially the change and adjustments to the contract. Engage with Howard and then Commissioner Lovell. Is there anything, Howard, that I missed in that?
Yeah, just the other thing is that this contract is basically identical to the one that's in effect now, with a couple of exceptions. One is the compensation piece, and the other was to delete references to the probationary period, which we're no longer in. And then we also had Blake Hutchins with legal counsel take a look at it to see if there was any changes needed, from his perspective, or any kind of labor law type perspectives. And so we got that input as well. So that's what this work product is. So yes.
Am I remembering correctly that this pay scale structure, this is a new creation, is that right? This is something that
Yes.
Mayor Cutchin, I think, had suggested that we create as part of this process.
Yes.
So without going into maybe a ton of detail, what was the methodology or the process for coming up with this pay scale?
So Rochelle Nicholas, our admin manager, assembled that pay scale, and she went through a pay equity study, and that was looking at where at my current salary is, and then where is salaries for comparable positions for comparable organizations, and what she was able to find on what those salary ranges were, sort of set the top end of that pay scale. And well, we have 17 steps for our pay scale, so it's starting at where I was at the bottom, what that 17% looks like on the high end, going up that 2.5, and then making the analysis to other organizations to see if that is within scope of what she was able to find. And that's was determined to be the case.
Great.
And these aren't automatic. It's, subject to your performance evaluation.
And the 2.5% is standard on our whole salary schedule, so
Or other staff.
for each step, yeah, for every staff member, yeah, so.
Yeah, I think this is great to have. I think it was a good suggestion that Brian had, and it sounds like a good process that we're showing through for coming up with it.
I appreciate that it allows the way that I'm receiving compensation from LRAPA and the board is similar in structure and scope to how we engage with all staff at the organization. And I think that equity is important.
So we'll move this along. Is there a motion to approve this contract with the LRAPA and Executive Director?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jared. Is there any further discussion, questions, comments?
Fraternization.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, we won't see you at some concert with somebody, right?
Yes, no,
The kissing camera thing.
I put less out there and less comes back at you, right? So there you go.
There's a lot of truth to that. All right, well, if there's no further questions or comments, I'll call the question. All in favor of approval of the contract as presented in the board packet, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm grateful and appreciate the opportunity and the continued confidence in the work I'm doing here.
I'll say it was a very easy process and had good support, with David and I and Blake, our attorney, and Travis. So it's a pleasant experience as opposed to some contract negotiations. So, went well. All right.
What's Matt's job to be in front of the camera now anyway, right?
Yes, he's doing a good job at it.
Very good. Let's move on to board and committee appointments. Travis?
Yeah, Chair Saxon, members of the board. So the staff report you see here for agenda item number 9 is a summation of all of the appointments and committees that the board has. Really, the reflection here is on board seats that are opening up in 2026. The Citizen Advisory Committee current roster is included there as well as the Budget Committee. Just for context, it is not a requirement of any board bylaws, which we don't have, or our Title 13 for the powers and duties of the director of the board. Traditionally, LRAPA board have worked with the chair, or the vice chair then becomes the chair when that transition is something that's to be determined and established. So note that that's a reflection that could be worthwhile in discussion for today. Another point of clarification too is there has been, or I had this impression or understanding that at large, so non-elected official board members serve 2-year terms in a row, and that's the max limit.
Two
terms, excuse me. That was clarified with the city of Eugene, where reflection was coming from. It was a different committee that restriction applies to, and it was applied to the LRAPA board. So for all of the City of Eugene board members, there is no set number of term limits that you can hold.
So we can keep Howard.
If Howard chooses to apply, he would not.
You need to talk to my wife.
So on kind of the next page of the staff.
Let me just interject for Dylan and Michael. The City of Eugene now is calling out for people that are interested, residents of Eugene, to serve on boards and commissions. I think you have until the end of the month to express interest. So if you are interested in continuing to serve, there is a deadline coming up.
And thank you, Howard. Also, Jared, your term ends in September of 2026. Each partner has their own process and methodology of making that appointment. For us, we are on the passive side of that information. So yes, if there's interest in continuing on the board for another term, please engage with Springfield or the City of Eugene on that process. And also, a reflection with the board on chair elections and vice chair elections for next month could be worthwhile as well. And then the final item I'll point out is the budget committee. I've highlighted where we have some vacancies. I'm searching and advocating for the budget committee. The Rivers to Ridges group, which is a ecology burning group, was here yesterday, and I made a pitch to that group looking for some fiduciarily minded individuals who might be able to join and sign up. Hopefully we see some interested volunteers, but that is threads that I'm pulling on. And Howard, I'll turn it back to you for discussion.
Can I ask a question? So what's the process again for bringing forward a budget committee appointment? Do I just send an email or?
If we have on our website an application that people can follow through, if someone just has an innate interest, they can apply. But as a board member, if there's someone that you identify, just connect me with that individual and I'll take it from there.
Great. I'm sorry for leaving my position vacant for so long.
No, I mean, and to clarify, the way the structure works is each board member has a seat on the budget committee. That doesn't necessarily imply that it's the board member's responsibility to fill that seat. I do see administratively that we have a good level of responsibility in trying to bring that roster to bear. But what support that you might be able to connect us with individuals, I really am appreciative of.
Yeah, I think I've got somebody.
You got 5 months.
Less than that, budget
Yeah,
committee starts in March.
The budget committee starts in March. So Dylan, who that potential individual may be at the February board meeting is a good opportunity for the board to, one, elect who the hearing officer will be at that session, as well as appoint any budget committee members. Last year, we did have, I think, 2 members who their first visit was in March. And so we had a convening of the board, so the board can appoint those budget committee members. The board recessed so we can go into budget committee. That's a structure we can do again if needed in March, but if we can take care of that in February, that would be a more efficient process.
Got it.
Anything else on this topic? Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to Eugene Public Health Code amendments.
Chair Howard, members of the board, this is a staff report that came at a request last month, or in November, I should say. The city of Eugene is proposing some public health standard code amendments. I'd say the context that's helpful here for the board is the city of Eugene's reflecting on J.H. Baxter and the Superfund site that has now become, and trying to determine ways to avoid those circumstances from happening in the future. So the city of Eugene between January and May of 2025 conducted some community engagement. They outreached to over 1,800 individuals. Some of the insights that they drew back from that was 94% of respondents agree that the health of residents near industry is important. 76% felt existing regulations do not do enough to protect health. The business community shared concerns on the regulations, questions about whether or not this was the appropriate place to make these changes to resolve this item, questions on potential regulatory or extra burdensome costs to them. So the city, in response to city council direction, has developed a 2-phase approach to this. The first phase, which is what the staff report is mostly focused on, is on a coordination mechanism between the city and regulatory organizations such as LRAPA, the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, and the EPA. The city of Eugene went through 3 versions of this ordinance change. The first version, which LRAPA commented on, we submitted 3 comments through this process over the fall. The first version had a likely to be issued language in terms of saying that an LRAPA permit hypothetically is likely to be issued. That gave some concern to us as well as to business owners of that language, which felt a bit ambiguous. Version 2 had what was a misunderstanding in my part of what I believe to be some circulatory dependency, where we have these items called land use compatibility statements, which are required to be a part of what we consider to be a completed application. And the LUX, or land use compatibility statement, is the city or county saying we approve of this type of work taking place on this property. I was believing that the city was waiting for LRAPA to say, here is your permit, or we have accepted your application before issuing that LUX. I received clarification that this was for issuing a building permit, not so much from the LUX. So there wasn't a circulatory dependency that I was misunderstanding, but there was a version 3 that the city of Eugene proposed that LRAPA commented in full support. And it's more of a, I would describe it easily as a FYI to regulators when they issue a building permit. So in short, the city of Eugene is going to issue a permit, a building permit. They send notification to us, and then we have the opportunity to be aware of that industry change and then determine whether or not we need to intervene or engage in that connection with the source that it may be. Phase 2 of this process the city of Eugene is looking to do is to bring in a hazard and risk analysis assessment that will, the intent is to provide the city with more insight on how to change land use restrictions in determining where industry goes and does not go across the city. From LRAPA, in terms of this coordination with the city, I think that this is a positive item, and it does prevent instances where we will go do an inspection at a industry location due to a complaint or some other reason and recognize that some of those activities should have LRAPA oversight and currently might not. And with this upfront notice, that allows us to see that and act before construction already takes place. From a staff capacity perspective, engaging with Max, it does not seem like that would be a huge burdensome lift for us. We do routinely receive questions from potential businesses saying, hey, LRAPA, do we need a permit? And we take a look, and if we determine that they do not, we give them a letter that says you do not need this permit, and that's a normal part of our activity that we're already doing, and is something that the city of Eugene may be looking for more when accepting applications for building permits. So that was kind of a lot of a word salad I just threw out, but I'm happy to clarify, answer questions, or engage in discussion.
I'd like to address the ranch dressing of that word salad, if I may. I was just curious, this is all like pre-planning, pre-construction kinds of things. I'm wondering if in the issuance of an LRAPA permit, does that come with substantiative or future inspections? Because Baxter, obviously, if we go back in time, they got a permit and permission to do something. And then over the course of time, they erred, got off the track and started burning and doing the things that they did, and nobody caught them for a long time. So I'm wondering if the LRAPA permit that we issue at construction would also come with periodic inspections attached to that.
Well, when we issue our permits generally, we do have inspection commitments that we get to. This coordination process would not increase that threshold of inspection for us. More, it's an informational item that we can review on. And if in that information that we're reviewing, we recognize that some of those activities might need a permit, it allows us to intervene and have a conversation and get an application if needed or necessary.
Good.
Is there an additional burden on temporary construction? Like if something's under construction, yes, it's going to usually have a greater air quality impact, but it's going to be for a shorter period of time. Is that foreseen in anything in the health code amendments or anything else that would be burdensome to a developer?
As I'm understanding your question in terms of they want to temporarily build an item, and so they're going to the city for that permission to build or to get to build that construction. So in that instance, what the city is going to do is asking for the applicant to self-attest what other environmental permits are they needing to require or needing to include in this application. So if a business wants to build something new, they have to self-attest, yes, we need environmental permits, or no, we do not need environmental permits for this project. The city reviews that, they send that self-attestation to us for then us to review that project and say, we disagree. You do need a permit, and let's initiate conversation with this source, kind of not including the city of Eugene in that point in time. We may follow up and say, hey, we're doing this, but it's just the information for us to digest and then determine if we need to take action or otherwise. And it can help to avoid instances where someone builds something, they install a boiler, and we don't know about it until we get a complaint and we show up and there is a boiler and no permit. In this circumstance, if that boiler, that building is being put in, we get a notification and we're able to look at that and then determine if we need to follow up ourselves.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments? I think it's great that you guys engage with the city on this process. And, I think it's good to have that intergovernmental cooperation, especially given some of the controversies in West Eugene, but I'm sure in other cities too, this is going to come up in the future. So.
I don't want to necessarily speak for the city, but I appreciate the opportunity as a local air regulator to be a part of these conversations. From my perspective, I do think that having heavy industry right next to residential property fundamentally is a flawed approach. And so the opportunity to be a part of the conversation to figure out how to make changes to do right by society in the future is, I think, a great complex problem to try to solve. And I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to be a part of those discussions.
Just ask, so the city's going to notify LRAPA about each project. And it sounds like you're not worried about that I guess like I'm trying to wrap my head around like the quantity or like the scope of that. Like I just am a little bit worried about, is that gonna create a ton of work? I guess I don't have an idea of like the number of projects that are coming down the pipeline.
Yes,
I'm guessing that a lot of them are like pretty easy decisions, but
I hear what you're saying, because that was
Yeah.
some of my reflection too, is how many, building permits the city of Eugene issue and how much of that notification we're getting to us. But this is only applicable to E2, I1, and I2 zoned industry, which in the city of Eugene is somewhat limited in scope. And so from that, what are all of the potential building notifications that we will get from those zone properties? We believe that that is a manageable amount of notifications.
Okay. Do you have like any ballpark idea of what that is gonna be? I'm not gonna hold you to it, but
Not for myself. Max, do you have a number on the fly? Would that be a tough one to kind of?
Yeah, we don't get a lot of, new greenfield activities, a lot of, transfers of ownership is more common. So, for an industrial activity, I can say that, in the past 5 years, we've gotten like one.
Okay.
Arkimoto was our like only new facility that we permitted since 2020 in the city of Eugene. So it's not commercial operations like gasoline dispensing facilities. Those are commercial, not industrial. So we get a lot more of those types of commercial activities.
Yeah, okay.
Roasters.
That seems manageable.
It's not, we have a problem.
I
I don't think they have to look through every kitchen remodel.
My gut first question was the same as yours, so I appreciate the question.
To contrast that, just for information's sake, there was 350 residential permits submitted in Eugene last year, compared to the 750 that was the previous year. So we're in a very downturn in building right now. Just FYI.
Not that we want a lot of food industry, but certainly we would like to see some
This is residential.
good industry, so,
Yes.
It's a balancing game.
it is a balance. Very good. All right, we will move on to director's report.
All right, thank you, Chair Saxon, members of the board. So the full director's report is there. We've kind of pushed through a couple pages of some new items that we added, so I won't go through in recognizing that. I will make a note, though, that at the last paragraph here, when I call out the backlog, if you are looking at the board packet that I sent to you last Friday, it's listed at 7%, which is incorrect. It's actually 5%, so I want to point that out to the board. But in general, November and December, we had some good air quality. We did see some air stagnation at the end of December, so we called some yellow homewood heating days where it was very gray and kind of mucky outside. I've had some good wind since then, so that has cleared on out and the air mass has refreshed itself. On November 3rd, there was a large fire. Radius Recycling shut down Highway 99 for an afternoon or an evening during the commute. Radius Recycling does not have an LRAPA permit, but we made a visit, we did an inspection, and we're having reflections on, through our titles, what enforcement opportunities exist and if there's a need for us to pursue that. So that is still internal, but it was a large, notable instance. There was lots of smoke that was put in the air and the fire took place right in the middle of the commute. So it was a big impact on the city on that day. Another notable item for the board from an air quality perspective was a smoke intrusion that hit Cottage Grove in late November, early December. We issued an outdoor burn letter permit for a property off of Diller Road closer to Cottage Grove. In the outdoor burn letter permit, we say if you're doing this burn, do it of these weather conditions with the wind blowing in that direction and make sure you're on site and all of these items. That burn did take place under our prescriptions for the outdoor burn letter permit, and it was great. There was no smoke intrusion. And then 2 days later, the property owner kind of stirred up the piles and they reignited and smoke was created and the wind was not in the favorable direction we wanted. And so that smoke blew in and had an impact on Cottage Grove for the day. Jim, I don't know if you if you were there for that, but we did observe that. So similarly, we're also reflecting on recognizing that keeping with our outdoor burn letter permit, there were some actions that fell out of prescription and what enforcement is appropriate in that space is something that we're internally reflecting on. We met in November, early December with all of the partners for LRAPA, except for the City of Eugene, which we're meeting tomorrow with Matt Rodriguez. Met with county commissioners, haven't yet to connect with Commissioner Farr, but we're essentially letting folks know what we've been working on for last year, things that are changing from a regulatory perspective on the federal, state, and the local level. Internal to LRAPA, we continue to work on our standard operating procedures with some updates to some policies like a telework policy, issuing a disability accommodation policy, hours of work and overtime policy, meal and rest period policies, things that are good to have from an administrative perspective, that I'm grateful for Rochelle's help in getting those items together. Linfo, which is our LRAPA info permitting database. We have a developer plugged in and they're getting on board with directly working with us as opposed to a step through LCOG to get our needs met on changes to our database software. Already engaged on the auditor RFP and how we move forward on that. And then a note on the budget side of items. The federal government passed a continuing resolution that expires on January 30th. However, current stance is that the EPA's funding is increasing by 3.38%. So as far as our 105 grant allocation that we get to us, the expectation at this point is that money is firm, not an increase at all from what prior year funding was, but the EPA's general budget is increasing by 3.8%. And current news seems to point to Congress will not have an issue passing that budget before the end of January. So I look forward to that happening. Christine and I are working with EPA Region 10 and managers on getting our grant application for the next 105 grant cycle in early this year. Region 10 has made it clear that they are lean on grant staff. And so if we want to receive our 105 funding, it would behoove us to be the first applicant on the list. So our goal is to have that application submitted before February is done. So we will be best aimed to be first to receive that allocation. And that's a conclusion of the director's report for the board for November, December.
Any questions of Alex?
I had a question. I just want to make a comment and commend staff on, and Matt in particular, on the educational video that was done on the process for the e-commerce application. I know there was a lot of public feedback on that. And I thought the 7 or 8 minute video that you guys put together explaining what was considered, what wasn't considered, how the process unfolded, I thought that was really well done and a good public resource. So I'm sure you had some help behind the scenes. So please pass along the appreciation to whoever helped with that, but I thought it was really well done.
Thank you.
Okay, and then, I guess that concludes our agenda, but as far as February meeting, you want to just go over what we're gonna, what the board agenda is likely gonna be on that?
Yes, we can pull that up. So in the director's report, if you look onto page, for the board packet in general, the red number, 41. So this is a list of upcoming appointments or upcoming agenda items for the rest of this year and then looking out into next year. So in February, we'll be receiving an update from Oak Ridge Air. The plan initially was to have Oak Ridge Air give an update in January, but we thought it would be beneficial to give a little bit more time on financial data reconciliation so there can be more of a full comprehensive report of the first targeted airshed grant. We will have a audit report for you on our supplemental budget. I think it'll be more of a staff report as opposed to or the presentation from the audit report. But a supplemental budget reflection on if we believe we will be over 10% of our budget, and if so, then we'll need to move forward with the supplemental budget before the end of the year. If there's any new budget committee members to be appointed, as well as appointing a budget officer, that's on the docket in February. And then electing a board chair and vice chair for the next year is also February to do.
I don't know if you mentioned that Eisler is going to be doing their presentation to the board next month also.
Yeah, that's in combo with that 25 audit report and presentation is what that intent is supposed to be.
Okay. Is there any other business or anything? Well, finished a little bit early, so call the meeting adjourned.
That's how it's done. At least we're early.
Right. Are you gonna re-argue with that? My good.
Yeah. Gosh.
So we would have been way early without.
Is that